Hey, this is Sanyam Bhutani, and you're listening to Chai Time Data Science, a podcast for data science enthusiasts where I interview practitioners, researchers, and Kagglers about their journey, experience, and talk all things about data science. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Chai Time Data Science Show. In this episode, I interviewed Dmytro Mishkin, who's currently a computer vision researcher and PhD student at the Czech Technical University in Prague. In this interview, we talk all about Dmytro's journey into deep learning and his journey into research. Dmytro has put out some amazing research work over the past few years, and we talk about how he approaches research in general, his take on research and his suggestion to future aspiring researchers. We also discuss another aspect of Dmytro's profile that I think is slightly rare when it comes to researchers. Kaggle. Dmytro is an active Kaggler and he has accomplished amazing results on many competitions, which we of course talk a lot about. This interview covers a lot of ideas around education, research, and practice. So I'm really excited to be releasing this interview. Quick reminder, please, if you're watching this on YouTube, remember to enable the subtitles. If you're not native English speaker, it'll definitely help your watching experience. For now, here's my conversation with Dmytro Mishkin, all about research, computer vision, and Kaggle. Please enjoy the show. Hi everyone, it's really a privilege for me to be talking to Dmytro Mishkin. Dmytro, thank you so much for joining me on the Chai Time Data Science podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's a privilege for me to have here.
Thank you so much. So I want to start by talking about your interest in deep learning. You're currently a PhD student at CTU and you have a background in aeronautical engineering, which is where I believe your Kaggle profile picture comes from. Can you tell us how did you get interested in deep learning? What made you pick this as a career path?
Hey. Actually, it's not exactly right regarding. So I'm also like a game player, and this is a screenshot from XCOM for I don't know 93 or like
Okay.
this Microprose XCOM UFO. So it's
Okay.
one of my favorite games. So it's because
Got
of
it.
this.
Okay.
And yeah, so regarding deep learning, actually, I think it's kind of random. I always took opportunistic approach. So once I go to this aerospace, it looks cool at that time, but then I realized that well, it's no. I mean, for doing aerospace is great, but you should work on like some huge facility with a lot of other people, and your responsibility and impact is like super small, at least at the beginning. So, and hardware, I don't like hardware don't like me.
Okay.
And so then I switched to computer vision, like all of the classical stuff. There was no any deep learning there. Then and at that time I was doing internship at CTU in Prague first. And at the time I also was doing classical computer vision. Then I came back, and I think there was time when I joined one startup, and we explored like how to do image search like fast and like not exact search but like image similarity, like for it was shopping app where you want to find something like similar shoe or bag, you take a photo and so on. So we go through and actually find the deep learning stuff, like actually now all retrieval done on deep nets, but at the time
Yes.
we were actually before the like first ECC paper 2014. So that's how I started, and it worked, and I actually loved it, and so that's it.
Okay. And what made you pick research over a career path? You do work with the industry as well right now, but your main focus is on research. Why did you intend more towards research?
Well, actually, it was interesting. So originally, I did my internship at CTU Prague, loved there, and then come back and in Ukrainian university. I was doing PhD, but I understood that my topic is completely crap. My work before this was completely crap, so I said, okay, let's change topic. I have this cool experience. They said no. I said, okay, goodbye.
Okay.
Then yes, so then actually I got another call from CTU Prague saying, okay, so we have like some like small idea. Can you back for 3 months and like finish and do this small paper? I said like yes, why not?
Mhm.
After 2 months, actually, it was 2013, and like in my own country, like Ukraine, so there was started like student protests because of government decided not to go to Europe, which was okay. I just looked at it, but then after 1 month, some police special force, they beat students hardly and so on, and there was next day like huge protest. And on the day I looked at, I think it kind of was important for me, so I left a note to my supervisor, say sorry, I'm going to participate in revolution in our country, and bought ticket for like in airport, not by online. It's actually first and only time I did this, and come
Okay.
back to Ukraine, and I was actually participating in protests like for 3 months. And so we actually changed our government successfully. Then I was kind of running out of money, so started to find looking for a job, and found this so one American guy looked for some technical co-founder, and we speak, we like each other, so I started to work there. And the time, and this where I came to Kaggle to deep learning. And then there was actually CVPR competition in year after this, where what I was doing in Prague was kind of relevant to this, and my supervisor told me, okay, do you want to like try this competition? I said, yes, why not? We did this, and he said, well, I cannot pay for your CVPR trip if you're not the PhD student.
Okay.
So would you actually, and you were doing well, or would you like to become PhD student? Well, I say yes, but there is a one problem. I don't know Czech language, and in Czech Republic, if you don't know Czech language, you have to pay for your PhD. And he
Okay.
said, well, but we have international students, and I have grants for covering this. I say, well, great. And can I, because I'm also working in industry, can I do partly of it remote? He said, well, it's harder, but yes.
Okay.
So there was time when I was both doing PhD and working at that startup. But in couple years, our startup actually crashed. So I say, well, I probably may want to come back to industry, but now I am in the middle of my PhD, so let's focus and finish this first, and then like who knows. So I cannot say I'm totally research guy or I'm totally industrial guy now.
Can you tell us what does a day in your life currently look like, and what problems are you currently working on?
I'm working on like two views stereo or white baseline stereo, where you have two images of the same scene, and you would like to find some correspondences between pixels or regions, or some geometric relation like camera pose, or if it's planar scene like your perspective and so on. And it's like the super old problem, but it's still not done. I think
Okay.
it works well if you have a lot of images, and the images are on of well textured type objects. That's where actually research kind of done, and it's just industrial level of good. But for something like if you have not that much images, or you have different sensors, or you have different seasons illumination, still a hard thing. So I'm working on this part. So there is a classical way how to approach is to divide into several blocks, like detect some key points, then describe them, then match, then found geometry. So like I'm working basically on each part. So far I have done something in learning descriptor, in machine, in ransack. So now I'm trying to learn actually detector and like overall control loop part, because it would be, I think, stupid to have the same algorithm which is run regardless if the sync pair is hard or easy. I think we should do something cheap for the most, and for the hard one, we should like work harder.
Okay.
So that's what I am researching now.
Are you also using deep learning algorithms for this, or more on the traditional side, like you mentioned, all of the traditional algorithms, or are you experimenting with a
Well,
mix of both?
I think that it's like I'm now working only with like deep learning, but just to learn like one specific part, because otherwise it's not generalized. Like originally people were like super excited going into it, but then some large scale benchmarks come and it turns out that it doesn't work at all. So now people are doing something hybrid, and like it's kind of what Harry Marcus say, okay, you need some hybrid system, blah blah, but actually people are doing this and just nobody is making hype of it.
Okay. So a common question is, how does research pipeline look like? Can you tell us, how do you approach a new problem? How do you think of new ideas? And what are your go-to steps when you get interested in a topic and want to start experimenting with it?
Well, like there are like two approaches. First is you have problem, like you have two images, you want to match them and you fail. So you start to investigate, why do you fail? And for example, maybe it's there is not enough invariance to viewpoints change, so you're thinking how to train these, or actually do test time augmentation or some other stuff, or design specific structure of your network. And another, you think, okay, so people are doing this by this work, but probably if you look at think how humans are doing this, or you read about some other areas and take inspiration, sometimes you just have ideas of what it's reasonable to try. So I usually have both of them, and then I just try to implement, think if it worked or not, and try again, and basically that's it.
Okay. I think even Jeremy Howard mentions this in Fast AI, that smart researchers don't go, okay, this did not work. They go, why did not this work? How do you decide how much you want to continue digging? Because sometimes some experiments don't work in machine learning. Nothing works until it does. When do you decide to end exploring or maybe continue exploring?
Well, like if something, well, it kind of depends on results and other stuff. Like for example, if something is not working at all, but it should work, probably it's kind of some kind of bug, and I continue digging. If it's working but working quite poor and I have no reason, I usually just drop it and switch. I came back to the same idea, I don't know, in 2 months or 3 months with some fresh approaches, or I can back never. But also it like depends on what you consider good result, because actually recently we have some idea with my master student. We explored for a year some image translation for illumination invariance, and we thought, okay, here is results, not that nice, probably we are missing something, let's go on. And I think like a month ago I found a paper
Okay.
which was doing exactly what we done and have exactly same results we done, but for those guys it was good results, and they decided to publish, and we were no, I mean, nobody would implement this in industry, so why should we do this?
Okay. Talking about your research philosophy, I'm a huge fan of your research philosophy. You focus on ideas which are practical, which deliver in industry, which unfortunately, not to offend any researchers, but isn't very common in the research community. Can you share more about your what things interest you? And I believe your research comes out of your everyday curiosity. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. So I think at least half of my research is done like from the problem. So one thing was like regarding deep nets and so on. I was playing on Kaggle, and it was super hard to initialize these deep networks, and VGGNet wasn't working. So I developed like the empirical way how to initialize things, and it started work.
Mhm.
And the same for the other stuff. I just wanted to kind of understand which solution work or which not. I just run like architect. Now you can call it architecture search, but then I was not trying to find like what is the best combination, but like how they improve of the different components. Or for example, for my like research for the like two view matching, again, if you have like super wide baselines, so like one is like here and another is like here, so it's like not very common. What can you do? Well, you can synthesize view, which was proposed before, but it is kind of super slow. What can you do? Well, you can do it like iteratively. You synthesize a bit, try to match, fail. If you have still time, you continue. If not, you say okay, bad luck. So that's it. Like if you have problem based or benchmark based, also benchmark based is a bit worse because you're caring just about single number. It's
Yeah.
you can go for shortcuts and so on, and like this is okay in Kaggle if you're not cheating. But for a real problem, it's kind of you still have to think. Okay, if I would need this for myself, would I to use this or not? So basically, that's it. I think in our lab, a lot of people are actually practically oriented, and like if for us it's more common, okay, maybe not going for industry part, but actually community is like very inspiring, and we go with our lab like people for lunch and discuss some stuff and so on, and like everyone is like also practical oriented, like not think okay, I should just publish. That's like not the way. And yeah.
I was reading about how your research papers came about to be. It was through experiments, and later you decided, you consulted with your advisor, I believe, that you wanted to publish papers. Is that true for all of your research? Is it always experiment driven and curiosity driven, or is it otherwise as well?
Well, I think it's some of them. I think my early papers were my advisor's idea. I just like implemented them carefully. I think it should be because if you have no experience, then you should listen to people who have experience. Then, but after some point, you actually should find okay, here is an interesting idea to explore, or here is another problem, and then you should continue to go. If you don't do this, and you all the time ask your advisor for new idea, probably something is wrong. So yes, and actually I don't think that I have any good idea. Also, all of them are like super simple, and anyone can come out with them. And it's funny that I'm kind of lucky with this ideas race, because this initialization was exactly the same idea from Berkeley, published on the same conference.
Okay.
Yes, so like it was super cool timing, because I don't know if I get these results like several months later, it would be too late. And I think it was with other papers as well, like for learning this descriptor. It was actually not my idea, but my co-author, and I helped her. And then, but we also were like super lucky in timing, because the same idea was published for other areas. I think like 5 times,
Okay.
almost in the same. So here you should also be lucky or have more original ideas, which I don't have,
Okay.
unfortunately.
So FastA is an upcoming course which right now is by invite only. It'll later be available as a MOOC, but I copy pasted your introduction from there, and you say you're much more an engineer than a scientist, and dream about when machine learning will be more reliable, debuggable, and understandable as software engineering. Do you see the shift happening towards software engineering in the future, that machine learning cutting edge will trickle from research to software engineering?
Yeah, I hope so. Well, I think that like 5 years ago it would be like unimaginable that some software guy just go and build their own like application demo and so on. And now first what you can do, like the probably worst approach, but still, so first you can use API from Microsoft and Google just for object detection. If you have some clever idea, that's it. Then you have this old TensorFlow or PyTorch models. So again, you can implement this yourself, but it's super easy. Or you can use fast AI something. Even if you need to go deeper, you can copy paste like Kaggle solutions and so on. And actually, I like this because there is this some threshold. Like the more need you study to begin with, the actually less people can invest that amount of time. And often the people who are not having like that much time, they are super creative. And for example, this colorization from JSON as this Dell device super cool thing, would it be able like 5 years ago, or because actually even 5 years ago there was paper about it, but it was much
Yeah.
harder.
Yes.
And now actually my dream is not only this accessibility, but also when we take like good practice from software engineering, like unit tests and so on. Like now we have only integration test, which is like your validation or test accuracy, right? And
Yeah.
when someone would have an idea how to make really unit tests for the machine learning, it would be, I don't know, like a Nobel Prize for machine learning.
Definitely. So, for a person who's maybe a new person in research, what do you think would be? Do you see as the number one mistake that just a newcomer makes? And for someone who's decided to invest their time into doing research, how do you suggest they spend their time?
I would say it's like super dependent on person type, because different people make different think differently. But for me, it definitely the number one mistake I was making. I was reading, and then doing nothing. And that reading is, well, definitely you should read, you should know. But now I think you first should just write your program, try your even stupid idea, but at least you would have some understanding what works, what doesn't work, what is hard, what is easy, and then read some other people ideas and update and so on.
Okay. How do you keep up with research right now in that case? Do you still try to read all papers, or is it limited?
I don't. Well, I use Archive Sanity, which gives you this nice screenshots of, and actually usually it enough for me to decide plus abstract should I read this paper or not. And I think 2 years ago I was reading this daily basis. Now I'm reading this like once a week, because in longer run, like if it's something were super important, other your colleagues will tell you, or it will be implemented in fast AI or whatever. Or if you miss something, like in 2015 it was, I don't know, 40 papers on PPR on segmentation. And
Okay.
where are they now? Is it important? Probably not.
Okay. For the audience, I'd also like to share another aspect of your profile that is slightly uncommon. You're also very active on Kaggle, and your top rank has peaked at in the top 300 in the competitions tier. Can you tell us more about your Kaggle experience, and why did you decide to spend time on Kaggle?
Well, I think first time it was this plankton classification. It was actually first image. Well, maybe no. It wasn't first, but it was first image recognition challenge when I was aware of Kaggle. And before, like with this classical Kaggle, in terms of like you have lots of gradient boosted models and so on, which I think, well, it's can be automated, it's okay, it's like not for production, but it's interesting. But then what I dislike is like really feature engineering, because it's I'm not the main expert, and I probably never going to be, and like trying to do this, I don't think this is like transferable. I mean, it might be transferable if you would work, for example, if it's like a recommendation for Airbnb and then you will continue in some company, yes. But then it's usually these skills, I usually don't like to develop skills which I cannot use in the future. So, but this Kaggle I was actually learning the deep learning, and well, let's try this. Very cool. I recently bought my GPU card. So this is super great usage of it. So
Okay.
let's do this, and I end up, I think, ninth, and I was like second one who was not part of huge team or university lab, is only one GPU. So it's kind of cool. And now, actually, I don't remember the competition, but some guy in Kaggle. Well, I have small computational resources. I have only two 1080T, and I said, well, man, I have 4-year-old Titan X. This is actually not still that small computational resources, right? It's like still powerful GPU. And Kaggle, I think it's a super great thing to learn, to try. Like if you don't overfit to this, and if you just don't want, okay, I want to do number one, so I do dirty tricks, or I do something like assembling all of 1,000 models, or if you just like try to go best with single model, I think that is like where it's great idea. And actually, I was always inspired that after I think 2 Kaggle wins, the Sander Deleman was invited to DeepMind. So he was the guy who won this Plankton challenge, and then he published a paper on it, and then he went to DeepMind and so on. So
okay.
and I also like the Kaggle that people there are like super friendly. Well, maybe some people are not, but mostly if they answer, they share, and this is very good. Like I don't like where you have like competition and everyone is like super secret and so on. Actually, I think one of even in 2016 though, Benjamin Graham was like computer vision researcher from, I think, Warwick. He actually even open sourced his own deep learning library at the time and showing, okay, guys, I am having like I'm on the first place and it's kind of boring. So here is what I do and here is what I use with me.
True
I
savage
like
of the
this.
times. Now, do you have any favorite battle stories? You've been active on Kaggle for a few years. Any favorite competition? Any favorite battle stories, as I like to call it?
I think it was like a recent, like latest one I used. This is whale classification. It was fun that I say, okay, so I don't have that much for Kaggle now. I also should be kind of learning something useful. And in image recognition, it's probably not that much. So I'll force it myself. Okay, I should learn fast AI library, so I'm going to use it. But I was lazy, and then Radek wrote this amazing starter, and I tried this. It was super cool, so that's why I called my team Thanks Radek.
Yes.
Yes, and so was it. And I was actually wanted to use a metric learning approach. Like I had some plan ahead what to try, but before I said, well, let's find what like just simple classification, how far it goes, and it was improving and improving and improving, and I was actually end up like never trying this metric learning because classification was super great, and I think, and then we also teamed up with some other people, Anastasia and Igor. And what I love about them, it was kind of serendipity of approach. So when you don't come with like specific ideas, but with open mind and to try to make maximum from it, it was cool. And we also tried to do something in the last moment, which is probably it wasn't very workout, but say it's still like number of different papers on ideas I have tried, and in 2 weeks it was like I think much more than like 3 months before combined. That's why this Kaggle, you focus, you implement the thing, it doesn't work, okay, you debug, you go there.
Okay. I'll definitely have your write up from the whale competition linked. I use Radix implementation, but I'm not as smart as you. Our team only ended up in the silver zone. But I really enjoyed your solution for the audience. Please check it out in the description. Another thing that I'd like to ask you is you're one of the few researchers who not only knows what the word Kaggle means, but you're also active on it. It's also contributed to your research. What are your thoughts on the platform? Do you recommend it to other researchers and practitioners as well, or it's just for you maybe because you enjoy competing?
Well, I definitely recommend this. Like first, I think like at least 1.5 my papers come because of Kaggle. Like this initialization paper is like directly out of the my Splankton competition, and the rest I think it's very good. I'm also a fan of Nicholas Taleb books, and the idea of having skin in the
Skin
game,
in the game.
which means that yeah, I love this. So one of competitions was in image retrieval, and I was developing these local features for image retrieval. So I decided to try how good they are. We end up on 14th place, which means that they were not terrible, but it's definitely not the state of the art. And also it was quite like good. Well, at the time it was not that good, but a super useful experience when the Anokas and his team beat our labs, and not only me, but people who specifically work in image retrieval, like researcher devote their PhD there, and they were beaten by like a team of Kagglers. This is like super important thing to stay in reality and don't think that you're that smart, or maybe you do actually. You never know until you try. So there are other competitions who was actually won by researchers by large margin just because of like their own like ideas and papers, but usually it's not the case, and that's why I love Kaggle. It's yes, it's kind of artificial, as I recently started Twitter threads. Like, of course, it's sport. In any sport, you have rules and overfitting, but if you're world champion in boxing, it means you know how to fight. That's it. And yeah.
That's a great analogy. For the audience, I'd like to drop a plug. I've already interviewed, I don't think he's human, I think it's a robot AGI, but do check out my interview with Anokas, who's still the youngest Kaggle Grandmaster. That really speaks to how Kaggle is, in a sense, true. It's a war where anyone can enter, and if they are truly skilled and they can pick up the skills, the leaderboard doesn't lie.
Yeah, so he's super cool. I admire Anokas.
For sure. How do you suggest someone who's just starting to compete? What approaches do you recommend to them on Kaggle? For example, someone who's signing up right now for image competition or otherwise.
Mm, I think just start and don't be shy to try other people code and so on, because like for me, I am lazy. Like usually when I start to work on new project or new Kaggle, the worst time for me usually takes months or two. It's just write a bare bone of something which is I know just first thing which have all the functions. So this is super hard for me to start. That's why I was thanking Radek, because he was written everything, and I can then start playing, changing, and also I love the first AI idea that first you implement your network in 3 lines with everything done for you, and in the end you dig in and implement everything from scratch. But it's like only later. Don't lose your motivation. And that's what I would recommend. Don't try it your own solution, data loader, try test something which works, but then try to understand why it works, change something, and then you dig and so on, and that's it. And Google actually, now it's super friendly, both research and people wise, because I think 8 years ago the Google Scholar was actually doing a bad job in searching papers, and even if you found a paper, there was no way to download them because it was like $40 for the paper. Now most people publish on archive. You also have like, even if it's not archive, on maybe on ResearchGate and so on. Now you can really read, and you don't that much need university or other official stuff. So you do this for probably proper way of thinking, some basic stuff, because but it's, I cannot say that like basic math or basic this thing is not important, but you can do them a bit later, and like fire and motivation, I think it's better to not to lose them then from something boring and think, okay, I'm not capable, this is for smart guys, I'm stupid, and drop it.
Okay.
That's no way. That's why Kaggle is great. You can just start and go.
For sure, you can always copy and fork and then add ideas once you get a hang of it. Coming to another aspect, you also taught courses during your masters. You taught a bunch of courses, and currently you only teach computer vision. Why is teaching important to you, and how does teaching help you in your current research ideas or Kaggle, for example?
Well, it's in my okay. I got used to think that I don't like teaching at all. It was in my home university because it was kind of duty, and it was kind of it's I need to prepare something and teach something which I not much an expert. So I spent a lot of time trying to understand, preparing some material, and then I don't use it in this year because someone else was put there to this course because I have no idea reasons and so on. And now actually, when I started to teach what I am expert in and what I'm doing now, that's I am enjoying. It's I now put in our this computer vision lab course from MATLAB to Python and PyTorch, and that is super great. And regarding like why teaching, well, mostly teaching is good for you to understand this like small details, because to pass exam or to use, you don't need to understand it that deeply. But if you need to answer students questions, and their student questions are usually not always, but usually smart, and you could never actually thought about some aspect. And if you don't understand, you say, well, it's kind of very bad feeling when you're in such situation. So that's why it helps, and then it gives results. But I think it's important to only teach things which you're expert in and which are important to you. Otherwise, I think stuff which I did in or before, in like my home university in Ukraine, was actually not that good quality, just because of this my lack of expertise and lack of motivation. But unfortunately, I think it's a case for a lot of schools. So you teach not because you want to, but because you need to, and that's the problem.
What are your thoughts on someone who maybe doesn't have the privilege of learning from you? They're signing up for a MOOC. What are your thoughts on MOOC? And do you think a MOOC educated person can also be a good research contributor?
Well, I have not that much experience, so I think I took one of the first Coursera course on this self-driving cars kind of. And actually, I love MOOCs. Like now there are lots of them, and they are not all good quality. But at the time, there was like super polished and from top experts. And I was master in aerospace. I was kind of supposed to know everything about Kalman filters, and but I was actually have still problems understanding them. And on this course, it was explained in super simple terms, and I like it was clicked, and then I understand everything. That's why I think these online courses are very great thing, and it's often probably better than use some not good university course for sure. And I think also at least in our, if you're a doctor or if you're designing I don't know, some building which could collapse and kill thousands of people, then probably it makes sense to go super conservative, study a lot before and so on. But for some stuff like programming and others, where usually people life not depend on us unless you're developing self-driving cars and so on. I don't think even that it should be like some higher education university. I mean, it's just as a profession, as I don't know, you make shoes or whatever. Actually probably making shoes is harder. And why should you spend this for 5 years studying some theoretical basis and so on? It shouldn't be like this. You should be go I like actually medieval idea of apprenticeship, or how to call it, when actually some people come and learn from some experienced guy and so on. And I think this with this MOOC is kind of starting to do this, because you can now touch a professor you never have opportunity in real life, and then you can find on the forums, you can find some people in your city you were not aware of, and then work with them together and help each other, and also maybe do some internship and so on. So yes, I think it's at least part of the future. I'm not sure if the MOOCs are the answer, but they're definitely part of it.
Talking about one special MOOC that I think we both have enjoyed a lot, Fast.ai. What are your thoughts on the course, and have you taken both the parts of the courses?
So like I officially enrolled only now. It's a German invitation, and before I was actually using this as a uh, textbook. So I was not going from something to something, but just taking some specific part, mostly about fast AI library itself, and another from some practical aspects. So, and now I think it's I'm going to go like through it all, and I'm super excited that it have now a part on text, because I have no idea about this. And also I'm excited about these tab nets, whatever, like using neural networks for tabular data and other things. So I can share my experience when I finish,
Okay,
but
awesome.
I sure it would be great.
I'm most definitely it will be, and I hope you'll contribute also to the course. But coming to one aspect, that the course is a huge propeller of blog posts. I'm a huge fan of your blog post audience. Again, it's there in the description. If you're not familiar with it, do check out Dmytro's blog post. But can you tell us why is blogging important to you, and what does your blogging pipeline look like? When do you decide to write a blog post?
Well, it started even before my university. It was no blogging, but at the time my mother were taking some remote course in write how to be journalist. And it was done by Alex Levitas, who is, I think now he's business training in
Okay.
like in Russian speaking countries, but at the time he was also teaching journalism, and because he was working as a journalist for a long time. And I think I was using these ideas and things to write essays for high school actually, and it was helped me to have a good grade. And at that time I understand that writing is can be joy, and this also can help to formulate your thoughts and revisit and iterate, because when you're thinking about this is kind of vague things, when you do writing and then polishing, and you understand how bad your formulation is, so you improve it and improve it. And I think I was then I actually worked as a journalist in Ukrainian journal about photography. I was fan of photographers. I was doing interviews with them like you know. And So I continued writing, and when I just went to PhD and so on, it was like I missed a bit something. And writing papers is not that fun, like, because you need to be super strict, super precise, which is also good, but is sometimes you don't want to be super correct. You just want to be understandable, and you want to share something,
Yeah.
and that's it. So one thing I write about just to get feedback, and maybe I'm wrong, and other stuff was to share actually knowledge and impressions from conference, because I'm trying to build some community in my home country, although I am now in Czech Republic. But Ukraine is super great for engineers. We have a lot of them, but almost no proper academic background. And I trying to share and write report about all the conference I attend, how cool they are, how much opportunities, and all this stuff. And so this is I like to help others, not because I am that good guy, no, but because I was helped, like someone else was helping me a lot, some different people, and I feel that I have a kind of duty to pay back. So that's it. And one more thing regarding blog posts, when I have like couple of posts which I wrote specifically to just to give a link to them when I got asked. Because when I teach now, for example, local feature stuff is like not that popular anymore, and students don't know about this, so it's easier to write everything once and then send the link than to explain every time.
Right. It's also sometimes annoying to the other person when they ask for a question and your easy answer is just a blog post link. But I think it's easier also for the other person if you keep getting asked the same question. You're also a huge supporter of the community, your efforts at EECV, and I believe you also help students in your country with coding, generally speaking. Thank you for all of your help to the community. So my final question to you would be maybe two questions. What best advice do you have for someone just starting their journey in computer vision and someone who's aspiring to be a future researcher?
Okay, first I would say that it's if you're thinking about research, like just start to do something for you yourself. I think it's kind of too obvious advice everyone giving this, but I think this is because it's true. It's sometimes hard to think about problem for you, but then you can ask your girlfriend, your mother, or whatever, and you definitely would end up with some small cool project and to do this, and you can taste it and you can learn. But regarding going for research as a like PhD career, it is like huge commitment. Like even in the at least it's 3 years, and often it's like 5 or 6 years. And I think the best idea is to first develop some small stuff to actually be able to show to some professor, and then go to internship. And if the professor is good, or like companies good, they understand that it's cheaper for both sides to just work together for 3 months and understand if we both like each other, if it's a good career path, and only then think about like going to PhD. Because otherwise it's just a leap of faith, which is not always good idea.
Yeah.
And one more thing, uh, um, I don't want to speak badly, so I would be saying in general, but like I have lots of friends which study in different labs, and some of labs are so like super fancy, super famous, but they are kind of like industrial stuff. You should do this. If you don't do, you kick out, regardless, and so on. And some others, maybe they're not that famous, but they're like much better community, and like community, and like if your colleagues and your professor great as a person, and you can learn a lot from them, which is the case for mice. Like I came to this my internship with Professor Matos like a lot of years ago, and there was a room, I think. So it was Czech Republic, but there was only one Czech person in the room. There was a lady from China, lady from Russia, guy from Mexico, guy from Austria, and so on. And I asked them, like, why are you there? And they say, well, we met with Irji, it's Professor Mata's name, and he was so nice. He invited them. He's so great. That's why they are all there. And this is, I think, this is how you should actually choose your PhD place. You don't. Topic is important, but I think the like proper and human professor is like even more important. I think this is what you don't really read in advices for PhD. So yes, you should select like professor, not school. That's true, but they usually concentrate on that it should be relevant to research. You know, usually a research topic for your PhD is not that relevant, and I think like in 20 years, wherever if you go to academic path, continue or industry, probably it would be. You would not be famous because of your PhD thesis. Like, it's just kind of just one stage, and it's a topic probably not that important. Much more important how you keep your motivation, how much you learn, and that's you should focus on.
Before we end the call, what would be the best platforms to follow you and follow your work?
I think that's Twitter is best platform. When I post something on other, I just put there.
Okay.
But I think I post a lot of other like maybe not relevant stuff, and like maybe post too much, so it might be not the best idea to follow me. But you know,
I'd highly recommend that you do that. I'll also have your blog. I think it's a Medium blog linked in the description. Definitely recommend to the audience to check out Dmytro's awesome blog post. Dmytro, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast, and thank you so much for all of your amazing research contributions and contributions to the community as well.
Yeah, thank you for interview. It was so super good to talk with you, and I hope it will help someone.
Likewise. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to give it a review or feel free to shoot me a message. You can find all of the social media links in the description. If you like the show, please subscribe and tune in each week to Chai Time Data Science.